Good morning and welcome to our morning meditation. I hope you're having a wonderful morning as always. I'm going to jump right into our meditation this morning because we have a longer meditation. But I want to remind you to invite your family and friends to join us each morning as I'll be sharing with us daily some words from our transcendentalist forebear, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and some other reflections, either from UU history, meditation pieces, other things that we'll be sharing in. And I invite your feedback, and I hope that we can enjoy this time together. You are invited to settle in and join me in a time of meditation and prayer as we come together as one body to reflect and send goodwill into the world. Please settle in as we listen to these words from Ralph Waldo Emerson. From The Tragic. We must, we must walk as guests in nature, not impassioned, but cool and disengaged. A man should try time, and his face should wear the expression of a just judge. I'm getting told that I don't have volume. Do I have volume now? Is the work? Do we
I
have?
don't hear anything. Like it just cut out all of a sudden.
Okay.
It was there.
Let's see. Show volume. There.
I just don't hear anything. But just keep going.
Well, okay. All right. Well, we'll start over. I don't know if you have volume. If you do, then let me know. If not, please let me know in the comments if you can hear me or not. The tragic. We must walk as guests in nature, not impassioned, but cool and disengaged. A man should try time, and his face should wear the expression of a just judge, who has no wise made up his opinion, who fears nothing and even hopes nothing, but who puts nature and fortune on their merits. He will hear the case out and then decide. For all melancholy is, as all passion, belongs to the exterior life. Whilst a man is not grounded in the divine life by his proper roots, he clings by some tendrils of affection to society, mayhap to what is best and greatest in it. And in calm times it will not appear that he is adrift and not moored. But let any shock take place in society, any revolution of custom, of law, of opinion, and at once his type of permanence is shaken. The disorder of his neighbors appear to him universal disorder. Chaos is come again. But in truth, he was already a driving wreck. Before the wind arose, which only revealed to him his vagabond state. If a man is centered, men and events prepare to him a fair image or reflection of that which he knoweth beforehand in himself. If any perversity break out in society, he will join with others to avert the mischief, but it will not arouse resentment or fear, because he discerns it impasses limits. In many traditions, it is believed that you speak out loud your wish of goodwill, that it gives power to it. Therefore, I offer today our planet, our mother, We have abused her in many ways. And today, amidst the anxiety we see around us in humanity, we are starting to hear tales of our mother healing. We are hearing tales of less smog covering our cities and pollution being pumped into our airways and waterways and oceans. May we hold our Mother Earth today and always as we come out of this pandemic for humanity. May we not turn back to our old ways, but instead look for ways to continue our healing of our mother for the generations to come. I invite you to speak peace and love into the world by speaking of those you hold in your hearts as we send positive energy into the world. I invite you to list in the comments below or speak out the name of someone you would like to send goodwill at this time. We speak of that which we carry in our hearts as a sign that we care for the interdependent world around us. I now bind not only that which has been named and made known to us, but that which is held in our hearts and unnamed, but held in the love of our community as we gather. Today, our meditation is remembrance of the universalist and storyteller Hans Christian Andersen, who was born on April 2nd, 1805. Andersen's writings were often an expression of his universalism, in that they reflect a siding with the oppressed. He, as he does in the story of the ugly duckling, looks for the beauty within that is not often seen from society at large. His stories often defy race, social status, and personal history, and instead focus on potential and learning from the tale, the story, and the vantage point of the marginalized. I invite you now to readjust your body, to be able to turn your chair if you can, or face a window or other light source, to find a comfortable position, sitting, standing, or laying, as open as you physically can. Uncross your arms, uncross your legs, roll your shoulders back, and open your chest. Move your neck from side to side. Stretch it. Allow the blood to flow more freely through your body. And listen to these words that I will share with you from Hans Christian Andersen. The Ugly Duckling. It was a lovely summer in the country, and the golden corn, the green oats, and the haystacks piled up in the meadow looked beautiful. The stork walking about on its long red legs chattered in the Egyptian language which it had learned from its mother. The cornfields and meadows were surrounded by large forests, in the midst of which were deep pools. It was indeed delightful to walk in the country. In a sunny spot stood a pleasant old farmhouse, close by a deep river, and from the house drawn down to the water side grew great burdock leaves. so high that under the tallest of them a little child could stand upright. The spot was as wild as the center of a thick wood. In this snug retreat sat a duck on her nest, watching for her young brood to hatch. She was beginning to get tired of her task, for the little ones were a long time coming out of their shells, and she seldom had any visitors. Other ducks liked much better to swim about in the river than to climb the slippery banks and sit under the burdock leaf to have gossip with her. At length one shell cracked, and then another, and from each egg came a living creature that lifted its head and cried, "Peep, peep." "Quack, quack," said the mother, and then they all quacked as well as they could, and looked about them on every side at the large green leaves. Their mother allowed them to look as much as they liked, because green is good for the eyes. "How large the world is," said the young ducklings, when they found how much more room they had now that they were not inside the eggshell. "Do you imagine this is the whole world?" asked the mother. "Wait till you have seen in the garden. It stretches far beyond to the parson's field. But I have never ventured to such a distance." "All of you out?" she continued. "No, I declare the largest egg lies there still. I wonder how long it is to last. I am quite tired of it." And she seated herself again on the nest. "Well, how are you getting on?" asked the old duck who paid her a visit. "One egg has not yet hatched," said the duck. "It will not break. But just look at all the others. Are they not the prettiest little ducks you ever saw? They are the image of their father, who is so unkind he never comes to see." "Let me see that one egg that will not break," said the duck. "I have no doubt it's a turkey egg. I was persuaded to hatch some once, and after all my care and trouble with the young ones, they were afraid of the water. I quacked and clucked, but all to no purpose. I could not get them to venture. Let me look at that egg. Yes, that's a turkey egg. Take my advice. Leave it where it is, and teach the other children to swim." "I think I will sit a little while longer," said the duck. "As I have sat so long already, a few days will be nothing." "Please yourself," said the old duck, and she went away. At last the large egg broke, and a young one crept forth, crying, "Peep, peep." It was very large and ugly. The duck stared at it and exclaimed, "It is very large, and not like the other ducks. I wonder if it really is a turkey. We shall find out soon. However, when we go to the water, it must go in, if I have to push it myself." On the next day the weather was delightful. The sun shone brightly and the green burdock leaves, so the mother duck took her young brood down to the water. They jumped in with a splash. "Quack, quack," cried she. One after another, the little ducklings jumped in. The water closed over their heads, but they came up again in an instant, and swam about pretty quickly with their legs paddling under them as easily as possible. And the ugly duckling was also in the water swimming with them. "Oh," said the mother, "it's not a turkey. Well, how well he uses his legs, and how upright he holds himself. He is my own child, and he is so very ugly after all, if you look at him properly. Quack, quack, now come with me. I will take you into grand society, introduce you to the farmyard. But you must keep close to me, or you may be trodden upon. And beware, above all, of the cat." When they reached the farmyard, there was a great disturbance. Two families were fighting for an eel's head, which, after all, was carried off by the cat. "See, children, That is the way of the world, said the mother duck, wetting her beak, for she would have them have like the eelhead herself. Come now, use your legs, and let me see how well you can behave. You must bow your heads prettily to that old duck yonder. She is the highest born of them all, and has Spanish blood, therefore she is well off. Don't you see she has a red flag to her leg, which is something very grand, and a great honor for a duck. It shows that everyone is anxious not to lose her, as she can be recognized by both man and beast. Come now, don't turn your toes. A well-bred duckling spreads her feet wide apart, just like his father and his mother. In this way, now bend your neck and say quack. The ducklings did as they were bid, but the other ducks stared and said, Look, here comes another brood, as if there were not enough of us here already. And what a queer-looking object one of them is. We don't want him here. And then one flew off and bit him on the neck. Let him alone, said the mother duck. He's not doing any harm. Yes, but he is so big and ugly, said the spiteful duck, and therefore he must be turned out. The others are very pretty children, said the old duck, with the rag on her leg. But that one, I wish his mother could improve him a little. That is impossible, your grace, replied the mother. He is not pretty, but he has a very good disposition, and swims as well or even better than the others. I think he will grow up pretty, and perhaps be smaller. He has remained too long in the egg, and therefore his figure was not properly formed. And then she stroked his neck and smoothed the feathers, saying, It is a drake, and therefore not so much of consequence. I think he will grow up strong, and be able to take care of himself. The other ducklings were graceful enough, said the old duck. Now make yourself at home, and if you can find an eel's head, you can bring it here to me. And so they made themselves comfortable. The poor duckling, who had crept out of his shell last of all, and looked so ugly, was bitten and pushed and made fun of, not only by the ducks, but by all the poultry. He is too big, they all said, and the turkey cock, who had been born into the world with his spurs and fancied himself really an emperor, puffed himself up like a vessel in a full sail, and flew at the duckling, and became quite red in the face with passion. So the poor little thing did not know where to go, and was quite miserable, because he was so ugly, and laughed at by the whole farmyard. So it went on from day to day, until it got worse and worse. The poor duckling was driven about by everyone. Even his brothers and his sisters were unkind to him, and would say, Ah, you ugly creature, I wish a cat would get you. And his mother said she wished he had never been born. The ducks pecked at him. The chickens beat him. The little girl who fed poultry kicked him with her feet. So at last he ran away, frightening the little birds in the hedge as he flew over the palings. They are all frightened of me because I am ugly, he said. So he closed his eyes and flew still farther, until he came out on a large moor, inhabited by wild ducks. Here he remained a whole night, feeling very tired and sorrowful. In the morning, when the wild ducks rose in the air, they stared at their new comrade. What sort of duck are you? They all said, coming around him. He bowed to them and was polite as he could be, but he did not reply to their question. You are exceedingly ugly, said the wild ducks. But that will not matter if you do not want to marry one of our family. Poor thing, he had no thoughts of marriage. All he wanted was permission to lie among the rushes and drink some water on the moor. After he had been on the moor 2 days, he came there came two wild geese, or rather goslings, for they had not been out of the egg long, and they were saucy. Listen, friend, one of them said to the duckling, you are so ugly that we would like you very well. Go with us and become a bird of passage. Not far from here is another moor, in which there are some pretty wild geese, all unmarried. It is a chance for you to get a wife. You may be lucky, ugly as you are. Pop, pop sounded in the air, and the two wild geese fell dead among the rushes, and the water was tinged with blood. Pop, pop echoed far and wide in the distance, and the whole flock of wild geese rose up from the bushes. The sound continued from every direction, for the sportsmen surrounded the moor, and some were even seated on branches of trees overlooking the rushes. The blue smoke from the guns rose like clouds over the dark trees, and as it floated away across the water, a number of sporting dogs bounded in and among the rushes, which bent beneath them wherever they went. They terrified the poor duckling. He turned his head away to hide under his wing, and at that same moment a large, terrible dog passed quite near him. His jaws were open, his tongue hung from his mouth, and his eyes glared fearfully. He thrust his nose close to the duckling, showing his sharp teeth, and then splash, splash, he went into the water without touching him. Oh, sighed the ugly duckling, how thankful I am for being so ugly. Even a dog will not bite me. And so he lay quite still while the shot rattled through the rushes. Gun after gun fired over him. It was late in the day before all came quiet, but even the poor thing did not dare to move. He waited quietly for several hours, and then, after looking carefully around him, he hastened away from the moor as fast as he could. He ran over field and meadow till a storm arose, and he could not hardly struggle against it. Towards evening, he reached a poor little cottage that seemed ready to fall, and only remained standing because it could not decide on which side to fall first. The storm continued so violent that the duckling could go no further. He sat by the cottage, and he noticed that the door was not quite closed in consequence of one of the hinges having been given away. There was a narrow opening near the bottom, large enough for him to slip through, which he did very quickly, and got shelter for the night. A woman, a tomcat, and a hen lived in this cottage. The tomcat, who the mistress called my little son, was a great favorite. He could raise his back and purr, and could even throw out sparks of his fur if he stroked it the wrong way. The hen had very short legs, so she called him Chicky Shortlegs. She laid good eggs, and her mistress loved her as if she could have been her own child. In the morning, the strange visitor was discovered, and the tomcat began to purr, and the hen to cluck. "What is all the noise about?" asked the old woman, looking around the room, but her sight was not very good. Therefore, when she saw the duckling, she thought she must have a fat duck that strayed in from home. "Oh, what a prize!" she exclaimed. "I hope it's not a drake, for then she shall have some ducklings. I must wait and see." So the duckling was allowed to remain on a trial for 3 weeks, but there were no eggs. Now the tomcat was the master of the house, and the hen was the mistress. And they always said, "We and the world," for we believed themselves to be half the world, the better half too. The duckling thought that the others might hold a different opinion on the subject, but the hen would not listen to such doubts. Can you lay eggs? She asked. No. Then have the goodness to hold your tongue. Can you raise your back or purr or throw out sparks? Said the tomcat. No. Then you have no right to express an opinion when sensible people are speaking. So the duckling sat in a corner, feeling very low spirited, till the sunshine and the fresh air came into the room through the open door, and then he began to feel such a great longing for a swim on the water that he could not help telling the hen. What an absurd idea, said the hen. You have nothing else to do. Therefore you have foolish fantasies. If you could purr or lay eggs, they would pass. But it is so delightful to swim about on the water, said the duckling, and so refreshing to feel it close over your head while you dive down to the bottom. Delightful indeed, said the hen. Why, you must be crazy. Ask the cat. He is the cleverest animal I know. Ask him how he would like to swim about on the water or to dive under it, for I will not speak of my own opinion. Ask our mistress, the old woman. There is no one in the world more clever than she is. Do you think she would like to swim or to let the water close to her head? You don't understand me, said the duckling. We don't understand you. Who can understand you, I wonder? Do you consider yourself more clever than the cat or the old woman? I would say nothing of myself. Don't imagine such nonsense, child, and thank your good fortune that you have been received here. You are not in a warm room? Are you not in a warm room and in society from which you may learn something? But you are a chatterer, and your company is not very agreeable. Believe me, I speak only for your goodwill. I may tell you unpleasant truths, but it is a proof of my friendship. I advise you, therefore, to lay eggs and to learn to purr as quickly as possible. I believe I must go out into the world again, said the duckling. Yes, do, said the hen. So the duckling left the cottage and soon found water on which it could swim and dive, but was avoided by all the other animals because of its ugly appearance. Autumn came, and the leaves in the forest turned orange and gold. Then, as winter approached, the wind caught them as they fell and whirled them out in the cold air. The clouds, heavy with hail and snowflakes, hung low in the sky, and the raven stood on the ferns crying, "Croak, croak." It made one shiver with cold to look at him. All this was very sad for the poor little duckling. One evening, just as the sun set amid radiant clouds, there came a large flock of beautiful birds out of the bushes. The duckling had never seen anything like them before. They were swans. They curved their graceful necks, while their soft plumage shone with dazzling whiteness. They uttered a singular cry, and they spread their glorious wings and flew away from those cold regions to warmer countries across the sea. As they mounted higher and higher in the air, the little duckling felt quite a strange sensation as he watched them. He whirled himself in the water like a wheel, stretched out his neck towards them, and uttered a cry so strange that it frightened himself. Could he ever forget those beautiful, happy birds? And when at last they were out of his sight, he dived under the water and rose again, almost amidst himself with excitement. He knew not the name of the birds, nor where they had flown, but he felt towards them as he had never felt towards any other bird in the world. He was not envious of these beautiful creatures, but wished to be as lovely as they. Poor ugly creature, how gladly he would have lived with the ducks had they only given him encouragement. The winter grew colder and colder. He was obliged to swim about on the water to keep it from freezing. But every night the space in which he swam became smaller and smaller. At length it froze so hard that the ice in the water cracked as he moved. The duckling had to paddle with his legs as well as he could to keep the ice from closing up. He became exhausted at last and lay still and helpless, frozen fast in the ice. Early in the morning, a peasant who was passing by saw what had happened. He broke the ice pieces with a wooden shoe and carried the duckling home to his wife. The warmth revived the little creature, but when the children wanted to play with him, the duckling thought they would do him some harm. So he started up in terror, fluttered into a milk pan, and splashed the milk all about the room. Then the woman clapped her hands, which frightened him still more. He flew first into the butter cask, then into the meal tub, and then out again. What a condition he was in! The woman screamed and struck him with the tongs. The children laughed and screamed and tumbled over each other in their efforts to catch him, but luckily he escaped. The door stood open. The poor creature could just manage to slip out among the bushes and lie down quite exhausted in the newly fallen snow. It would be very sad were I to relate all the misery and privations which the poor little duckling endured during the hard winter. But when it had passed, he found himself lying one morning in a moor, amongst the rushes. He felt a warm sunshine and heard a lark singing, and saw that all around was beautiful spring. When the young bird felt that his wings were strong enough, he flapped them against his sides. He rose high into the air. They bore him onwards until he found a large garden. Before he knew how it had happened, the apple trees were in full blossom, and fragrant elders bent their long green branches down to the stream where he would round a smooth lawn. Everything looked beautiful in the freshness of early spring. From a thicket close by, 3 beautiful white swans, rustling their feathers and swimming lightly over the smooth water. The duckling remembered the lovely birds and felt strangely unhappier than ever. "I will fly to those royal birds," he exclaimed. "I will kill them because I am so ugly, and they will kill me because I am so ugly and dare to approach them. But it does not matter. Better to be killed by them than pecked by ducks, beaten by hens, pushed about by a maiden who feeds the poultry, or starved with hunger in the winter." Then he flew to the water and swam toward the beautiful swans. The moment they espied the stranger, they rushed to meet him with outstretched wings. "Kill me," said the poor bird, and he bent his head down to the surface of the water and awaited death. But what did he see in the clear stream below? He saw his own image, no longer a dark, gray bird, ugly and disagreeable to look at, but a graceful and beautiful swan. To be born in a duck's nest, in a farmyard, is of no consequence to a bird, if it is hatched from a swan's egg. He now felt glad at having suffered sorrow and trouble, because it enabled him to enjoy so much better all the pleasure and happiness around him. For the great swans swam around the newcomer and stroked his neck with their beaks as a welcome. Into the garden presently came some little children. They threw bread and cake into the water. "See," cried the youngest, "there is a new one." And the rest were delighted and ran to their father and mother, dancing and clapping their hands and shouting joyously, "There is another swan! A new one has arrived!" Then they threw more bread and cake into the water and said, "The new one is the most beautiful of all. He is so young and pretty." And the old swans bowed their heads before him. Then he felt quite ashamed. He hid his head under his wing, for he did not know what to do. He was so happy and yet not at all proud. He had been persecuted and despised for his ugliness, and now he heard them say he was the most beautiful of all the birds. Even the elder tree bent down its boughs into the water before him, and the sun shone warm and bright. Then he rustled his feathers, curved his slender neck, and cried joyfully from the depths of his heart, I never dreamed of such happiness as this while I was an ugly duckling. Blessed be. May we all find our inner beauty when sometimes we feel like an ugly duckling. May we all find that we are beautiful swans deep inside and learn from this story of care for one another. May the goodwill that we hold in our hearts be a sign that we connect with our very silent self as we share these next moments of silence. May we say together, blessed be. I want to thank you who've been here today. I hope that you liked the story. I hope that you are able to reflect on it and take some time today to look at the beauty of nature and look at things as they grow and change. And, right now we are sometimes at an ugly time, in our world. And hopefully you can take this time to realize something beautiful that you can bring to it. So I want to thank you all again. If you have any comments or any suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And as we close our time together, may we reflect on the fact that there is always something larger than us that we believe in. May we send peace into the world. May we recognize that the divine and the beauty of the divine creation is both within you and me. And send love into the world by saying together, Amen, Amin, Shalom, Salam, Namaste, and blessed be.